I've always thought about retirement at 65, and I've kind of got stuck to that age. But now that I'm in my late 50s, I'm starting to think about what if I retire early or what if I retire late? What would that effect be on my retirement?
Yeah, so this is a question that comes up quite often. We've dealt with this on a regular basis. When can I retire? And how does that work? And this is what a retirement plan is all about.
Hmm.
It amazes me how many people just retire. I've run into people and you ask them why they're going to retire. Well, I'm 65. That was the most common question. I don't hear that as much as I used to because planning has become more, common. But it is kind of amazing, they know some things. I'm going to be able to get Social Security and I've got this money, but they don't really know if it's enough and what you should know. You're going to pull the plug on some career that might be hard to get back to potentially. And by the time you figure out that you don't have enough money or there's some big downturn that came that you weren't expecting, you might not be able to get back to that career. So I'd want to know up front, and that's where kind of the Monte Carlo simulation comes in on the financial planning. I'll give you an example here. I'll share the screen. Let's share it this way. This looks better. There we go. And so what we're looking at here is just, sitting down with a 50-something-year-old wants to know, can they retire, early, right? And here's the parameters. I want to spend this much. I've got these assets. I've got this income. Here's what my Social Security looks like, And so, can I retire at 62 instead of 65, right? That's the question. So we put it all in. We run the Monte Carlo simulation, kind of push this button. And here we go, 48% probability of success. So basically, your retirement at 62 with those parameters is a coin flip.
Oof. Yeah, not something I
It's
want.
a coin flip, yeah. So get out a coin and flip it and see if you're going to make it or not. Because all of those red ones there where you ran out of money before you ran out of time, that is a bad scenario. And if you look, they don't happen right away, which is even worse. It means now you're 80 before you run out of money, which are even harder to get back into, the workforce and those types of things. I want to know this when I'm in my 50s, making this decision early. This is the way to do it. And so we go through the process. What do you want to spend? What are some of the assets that you have? What do we have for outside incomes like Social Security, rents, pensions, those types of things, right? And we run the Monte Carlo simulation. So that's number one. Now, we might take a look at that and say, okay, so if 62 is still of interest, still very interested, burned out on the career, wants to make sure we retire earlier, have a better long-term retirement, maybe we look at kind of negotiating, the amount of money that's going to be spent, right? And so if we lower the projected amount of money that we would spend, and we look at maybe a little bit different lifestyle, and sometimes it's not a huge difference. It can be like a 10% difference, 10% less, right? And you can retire at 65 instead of working 62, instead of working those last 3 years. And so then we run the Monte Carlo simulation again, and we push the button. And so at this lower, income level, oh, there we go. Okay, so if you want to retire at 62, right, retire early, then we have a scenario where you've got 96% probability of success.
Yep.
If you're able to spend this lower amount.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like your levers. If I retire later, I can spend more money per year. But if I want to retire younger, then I'm gonna have to kind of lower that out or spending.
Right.
And so I think people got stuck to that age 65 was, we had a pension. People with pensions kind of had this fixed income that they knew about every month. And so, but now most of our retirements are market dependent. And so it's a little bit more kind of variable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, now what we're showing you here is a scenario that doesn't work at 62. It doesn't mean yours won't.
Yep.
You could be in your 50s and we run it. You could be at 96% with the exact amount of money you wanted to spend because you have enough outside incomes and or assets, right? We've seen that.
Yep.
We've seen these plans. But it's really important to know that before you get there and before you do anything. Now, This particular example that we're using here is a person who's in their 50s looking to retire at 62, right?
Yep.
So let's just say that's 5 years from now. You're 57, like me. Oh, actually, I'm 58. Never mind. I forgot. What that means is I've got this 5 year period. I'm looking at this. It will work. I can retire at 62, but I'm going to have to spend a little bit less money than I was hoping to do. But you still have 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you could really be motivated maybe to put more money away, to save more money. And we've seen this a lot. People in that last 10-year stretch before retirement, because, man, I'm going to try to get enough money put away and saved up, and we can figure out what that is.
Mm-hmm.
We can tell you, okay, you need an X amount more money to make it work, at least in terms of Monte Carlo simulation, to get to a situation where you can retire at 62 with the amount of income that you were targeting originally. And we've seen people do unbelievable things in that environment and really, really save and go for it and, and invest and do all these things that might make that happen, right? And so I think that's what makes this so powerful altogether. It's just the understanding of what works, what does it work? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. If it doesn't work, what does work? Okay, good. And then how much would I have to save to make it work? Because I still have time. This is not a person who's retiring next year or what have you, right? In this particular question. So it's a great question. It's a really powerful piece of what we do. This is where you can change the rest of your life.
Yep.
Really. I mean, basically come see us, talk about these things, and be able to really, understand where you're at, what you can do, what you need to save to kind of get where you're going. And it's fairly well defined. It's not just some random thing where it's just, oh, yeah, that sounds good, and maybe that'll work. Or this is a Monte Carlo simulation. It's pretty powerful. We've been using it for long enough to be impressed ourselves, and hopefully you're impressed by it also. So anyway, that's what we would look at as far as an answer to that question.